Welcome to College Algebra Section 2.2 Part 2. My name is Gregory Carlson, and you'll recognize this equation right here. This is the standard form that I showed you. And so we're going to learn how to graph things that have an x squared, a y squared, an x, a y, and just a constant term. Now you'll notice that there's sometimes an xy term, which makes life very difficult, and luckily we're just going to ignore that in this class. So the reason I wanted to show this to you is because the circle is one of many conic sections. They're kind of like different families. You have parabolas, circles, antiperbolas, and a few other special cases, and also ellipses, and these are all called the conic sections. So what I've done is I've shown you how to graph the first one right here. I've shown you how to graph the first one. It has the center HK and the radius. And you'll notice that there's similar equations for parabolas, ellipses, and hyperbolas. So all of this stuff right here is going to be covered in actually the final chapter of the class. We're going to look at all of this in chapter 6. So we don't need to worry about it right now, but I just wanted to show you that put this in the back of your mind, because we're going to look at all of this later. But just know that I've introduced the easiest one, which is the circle, which is that equation right there. So let's look at another example. I just dropped my eraser, so I better not make a mistake. It says, the next problem says, find the equation for a circle with center -2, 0 and radius 5, and graph it on graph A. Well, just as a reminder, the formula is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. That's the general form for a circle, so let's use this information to find the equation. The center is -2, 0, so those are the two numbers I plug in for h and k. So it should be parenthesis x minus -2 quantity squared plus y minus 0 quantity squared equals, so I just took -2 and plugged it in for h, and notice I get minus -2. And then I plugged in 0 and I plugged that in for k. And the radius is 5, and so we need to write 5 squared. So that's how you would plug it into the formula. Pretty straightforward. Let's clean this up a little bit. These two negatives become pluses. So this is x plus 2 squared plus y minus 0 is just y equals, and 5 squared is 25. So there's the answer. X squared plus y squared equals x squared plus 2 plus y squared equals 25. So there's your cleaned up equation. Let's go ahead and graph it. They told us what the center was, but we can also tell from here that the center is -2, 0. So let's graph that. -2, 0 is the point right here. There's -2, 0. And we have a radius of 5, so in each direction we go 5 spaces. And down, and remember we're doing all of these from the center. And then just connect the dots. So there you go. That's how you would graph that first equation. Remember, all of the points on this circle, all infinity of them, are all solutions to this equation. You plug in a value for x, you plug in a value for y, and you do all the math, and you should get 25. Every point on that circle will make that happen. And so that's the point of why we're doing this. Let's graph the next one. In fact, why don't you pause the video here and see if you can go ahead and graph the next one on your own. See if you can match my answer. I hope you had a chance to work on it, and let's see if you got it. So we have a center of 4, -6, and a radius of 3. So let's straighten our paper. We'll plug them back into this formula again. So the formula will be x minus 4 quantity squared plus y minus -6 quantity squared is equal to 3 squared. That's how you would set it up, by just plugging it into the formula. Let's clean this up a little bit. X minus 4 squared, the two minuses become pluses, and 3 squared is equal to 9. So here's the equation. X minus 4 squared plus y plus 6 squared. These parentheses are important, so make sure you keep the parentheses in, and that's equal to 9. So now let's graph it. Our center is going to be 4, -6, which is the point right there. That's the center. Notice that the center itself is actually not a solution to the graph. The center is not a solution to this, but it just helps us build the circle. So the radius is 3. And then you just connect all the dots. Kind of looks like a little eyeball. And so there you go. There's the graph of the circle. This circle is the solutions to this equation. And if it's not on the circle, then that means it's not a solution to that equation. Now, it's important to notice that if you don't have a number in here, if you don't have a k, then that means that that number is 0. So if you don't have a k right here, that means that 0, or if you don't have an h, then that means the center x part would be 0. So notice that because we had no 0 right here, it meant that the center was on the x-axis. If there was a 0 right here, it means that the center would be on the y-axis. Let's do this next one, and then we'll cut to part 3. What is the equation of the circle below in center radius form and general form? So in looking at this, let's see, we've got, you're going to want to kind of look at the circle. We need to find the center point. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of draw a dotted line between these 2 points and a dotted line between these 2 points. And the point where they cross, if these are perpendicular to each other, which I assume they are, this point is going to be the center. So you could also, if you wanted to, if these 2 points are on the diameter, you could do the midpoint formula, but that's a little extra work we don't need to do. So I noticed that this x value here is 5 and 5, and this y value here is 3 and 3, so we have a center of 5, 3. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. So we have a center of 5, 3. Let's see what the radius is. 1, 2, 3, 4. R equals 4, so that's our radius, and make sure you count that carefully. So let's put this into the equation form. It'll be x minus 5 squared, remember to flip your sign, plus y minus 3 squared is equal to the radius squared. So x minus 5 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 4 squared. That's actually the radius form. You could, if the computer doesn't accept your answer, you might turn that into a 16 and see if that makes it work. They also want it in standard form, in general form. And so the way you do that is you just FOIL and then move everything to the left. So remember, we need to FOIL this. This is x minus 5 times x minus 5. And this is y minus 3 times y minus 3. So this will be x squared minus 5x minus 5x plus 25. And the next part will be plus y squared minus 3y minus 3y plus 9 equals 4 squared is 16. So all I did in that step was FOIL this and FOIL this. Let's simplify this a bit. That combines and that combines. So we get x squared minus 10x plus 25 plus y squared minus 6y plus 9 equals 16. I can now combine 25 and 9, which would give me 34. And let's go ahead, well, okay, I won't skip a step. X squared minus 10x plus y squared minus 6y plus 34 equals 16. And then we'll just subtract 16 off on both sides, because we want to, for standard form, we want this to be a 0. So the final answer will be x squared minus 10x plus y squared minus 6y is equal to 0. And that is standard form. So it's not too hard, sorry, that's a little hard to read. It's not too hard to go from this form to this form. You just FOIL this, combine like terms, and move this number over. It is far more challenging to go from this form to this form, and that's what we are going to do in part 3. And so I will see you next in part 3.